Haibane Renmei comes to us thanks to the mind behind Serial Experiments Lain. It's just unfortunate to see that this didn't get quite the same level of recognition that Lain got, and I feel like it's due to the fact that Lain has this reputation of being one of these shows that is just too deep for you, which I totally disagree with. In case you haven't seen my review from sometime last year, definitely check it out if you haven't yet. And I feel like the viewership behind Lain are basically split between two people. Basically, you have the one type of person who is loving Lain because of its complexity, and you have the other type of person who is totally confused by it and probably doesn't want to touch any more of Yoshitoshi Abe's work due to that. Although the two stories differ greatly with each other, they actually share a little bit in common. First of all, we see that they both star a female protagonist. Secondly, they're both set in an unrealistic world where Serial Experiments Lain is set within a cyberpunk universe, and then we have Haibane Renmei that is set in this fantasy world. We also see that there's a bit of mystery created by understanding the world that the characters are living in, and we also have protagonists who are dealing with their own existentialism as well. Now, when considering that Haibane Renmei offers a much more moderate sense of mystery when compared to Lain, I feel like some of the die-hard Lain fans out there might not be as intrigued with the story as they are expecting, but at the same time, I feel like Haibane is much more accessible to the average anime fan because it is not nearly as complex, and the cast of characters are much more lively than when compared to Serial Experiments Lain, because some had the complaints about Lain that the characters were just a bit too drab for their liking, and I can totally understand that. So now that we've got all of the comparisons out of the way, we can move on to the meat of the video and discuss the story of Haibane Renmei. Oh yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. It looks a whole hell of a lot better than Serial Experiments Lain did, and I'm sure lots of people will actually appreciate that. So the story is set within a mysterious village that is surrounded by this massive wall, and that's one of the biggest mysteries in the show because nobody knows what's outside. You can't touch the wall, you can't climb it to look over it, and you certainly cannot travel beyond it. Additionally, the village is home to two different types of people. First of all, they have your regular humans just like you and I, but they also have the Haibane, who are beings that take on the likenesses of angels. They sprout from the ground out of these seeds that transform into cocoons where the Haibane have their dream, and then they come out and they grow their wings and they receive their halos, which oddly enough are formed on some sort of like a mold that you would put on the stove and melt something into the shape of a halo, and somehow or another it just floats on their head. I don't know what's up with that. It is pretty strange. Hey man, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I have your business card and I'm so lost and confused right now. Oh, I came into your store the other day and I exchanged one of my feathers for a used pair of pants, which, by the way, you really need to wash those because they were just rancid. And could you please just wash them because they smell terrible and they were not comfortable to slip into, let me tell you that. But anyways, I'm new to this village. I don't really want to be here. I want to go home. I don't even remember what home is, but I just want to leave. But there's this wall in my way. What do I do? How do I get out? What do you mean I can't? What's behind the wall? What do you mean you don't know what's behind the wall and nobody else does either? How am I supposed to live with this in this village and I don't know what's outside? How am I supposed to live? I wonder what's for dinner. So as the story begins, we're introduced to one of the Haibane named Reki, who is just going through this building. Randomly, she opens up a door and discovers that there's a seed growing from the ground that eventually becomes the cocoon that contains our protagonist, Raka. And as she escapes from the cocoon eventually, she starts living with all of the other Haibane as well. So naturally, Raka is feeling extremely disoriented because she doesn't really remember anything. She doesn't know who she is, who she was, where she is, where she came from. The only thing she remembers is the very vague dream that she had when she was inside of the cocoon, but she has all of the other Haibane to guide her, to show her the ropes, basically, as she's getting introduced to all of these new characters, and basically, the show has a lot of other slice of life elements as well, and Raka is going through, and she's joining some of these Haibane, and she's going to work with some of them because she needs to find a job in order to support herself, because that's basically the rules there. Haibane have to work, but at the same time, they get everything they want, basically, for free, as long as they work. So anyway, she's going along with all of these other Haibane. She's visiting their places of work and seeing some of the things that they do because she's trying to find the right thing for her because she just doesn't know anything. So this is actually pretty slow paced, but I feel like this is much more of a benefit to the overall story than anything else because we'll have Raka who talks to all of the Haibane and we'll learn about some of their backstories through fragments of different episodes. We'll just piece things together, and I thought that was really interesting, especially when it came to the character of Reki, because she is a much more important, she is actually the most important side character, and she has a really intriguing backstory here. I also enjoyed seeing Raka go around the village and seeing new things, because I just wanted to learn more about the place she was living in. And I also enjoyed when she would go to the library and talk to one of the librarians about some of the books that they had, because they contained little bits and pieces of things which were relevant to the history of the village and potentially things that were outside of the walls as well. So I really enjoyed that. And then there was also added levels of mystery as well, because there were these monk type people that were forbidden to talk to them, and there was a very strict amount of dialogue that could be had between the Haibane and some of these people. Like, they would have to wiggle their wings in order to communicate. So not to go too far into the story and risk spoiling something for somebody, I'm just going to be vague about this. The story introduces a sense of sin and salvation, which actually has a bit of benefit versus reward here, because some of the characters will be sinners and some of the characters will seek salvation, and we can actually see how this plays out on some of their lives and how it affects them internally. So this is something which I feel was really interesting that they added to the show, but at the same time, they also say that the show is not religious, but I mean, hey, you got sin and salvation, your characters look like angels. If it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, and if it farts like a duck, then it's probably a duck. I just see this show to feature a lot of religious symbolism, and when I start connecting the dots here under that mindset, I feel like I start uncovering clues about some of the characters' backstories from some of the things that they say in their dream, and also the way that they are in the story here. And I don't want to say too much, but I feel like the biggest mysteries you're going to have in the story involve things which they don't actually tell you about. Now, some may consider this to be poor writing due to the fact that all of these questions are presented, such as the characters wondering who they are, where they fit into the world that they're living in, and maybe they don't answer some of these questions, but I don't necessarily feel like it's the story's job to answer them. I feel like this is the type of show that you watch it, and you watch it with a friend, and then you talk with each other to try and uncover some of the things that you didn't really know about and weren't specifically or directly told about in the show. Because we have Serial Experiments Lane, which actually comes out in the end and tells you about all of these things, and next time you watch it again, you're going to see like, oh, I remember this, I remember being told this, and you understand it better. But Haibane Renmei doesn't really do that. It just leaves it open to your own personal interpretation, and I actually enjoyed that. So having said that, Haibane Renmei is actually a pretty quick anime to go through. It's really short, and it also has a complete ending as well. And even though you're going to be asking more questions, you can rewatch this, but it's not required to do so. You can talk about this with your friends and just debate over, you know, how you interpreted it versus how they interpreted it. I also enjoyed how the show gave this feeling that it had this this beautiful balance between the mystery and how intrigued I was, and the slice of life elements and how relaxed I was in that regard. So it's definitely an interesting environment with interesting characters, and I definitely recommend this. Have you seen Haibane Renmei? Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe, and also if you'd like to help support the channel, check out the Patreon, where you can find all sorts of bonuses for supporting the channel, such as weekly Discord chats and also early reviews, such as this one, which was uploaded a week in advance on Patreon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.